Hello everybody and welcome back to another Oscar prediction video. This is my August update. I know it's a little bit late, but I was considering not doing one in August at all since last month's was a little bit late and I thought maybe I'll just wait. But I do want to be more consistent with these. I want to try to have one up every month and hopefully a pixels to pictures or two in between those, because I've learned that one of the best ways, I don't plan on becoming a full-time content creator or anything, but one of the best ways to draw up interest as a YouTuber is consistency in how often videos are uploaded. So with that said, there are a couple of things I want to address in this Oscar prediction video. First and foremost, you will not see Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. I have made a decision to remove that film from my predictions entirely because we have heard multiple reports at this point that the movie is not coming out this year. Now, I don't believe we've gotten an official confirmation from Apple or Martin Scorsese, but it's been removed from Gold Derby and there's been a lot of reports. It was something that was rumored for a while, and I am ready. I'm willing to accept it and move on. The challenge is it makes a lot of these categories feel a lot more barren once you take away one of the top contenders, and some of the other contenders are not here either for reasons that I'll get into. But before I officially start the video, there is one very important thing that I would like to address. So way back in April, when I made my year-in-advance Oscar predictions, I, of course, looked up all of the big movies that were coming out, any big directors that had big movies coming out, and I did see Alejandro Inarritu is doing this movie called Bardo, and Inarritu, of course, did Birdman and The Revenant, so of course this movie would have eyes on it. However, when I looked up the film on Wikipedia, it said, clear as day, Inarritu has come under fire for reports that during filming he repeatedly ignored all COVID safety protocols, resulting in the deaths of multiple crew members. So I saw that and was like, well, obviously I'm not predicting it for anything. And then a couple of months went by, and I noticed that pretty much everybody else included Bardo in their predictions, and not a ton of people were talking about this controversy. And in the last video, there were people asking me, why don't you have Bardo in there? And even though I addressed it in previous prediction videos, I thought for this one, okay, let me pull up the article so that you can all see what I'm talking about here, because I feel like people just don't know about this story. And so I went to Wikipedia, and what do you know? It's no longer a part of the article. It doesn't mention it at all. And so I look up any other articles online for this story, and I know I didn't make it up because I can find subreddits of people talking about it, but in terms of an actual legit article that's addressing this very serious issue, nothing. Zero. Which means either the whole thing was made up and then it got debunked, or more likely, it did happen and Inarritu is doing everything in his power to bury this story, which is just disgraceful. I mean, if this was fake, then I think Inarritu would come forward with a statement. But instead, this is a thing that happened that is being buried. And it makes me so physically sick. And I have to imagine that when this movie comes out and Inarritu is doing press for it, there's gonna be a lot of talk about, maybe not at first, but the families of the deceased crew members are going to come forward. There's gonna be reports about them, obituaries. This is gonna be a big thing, right? I'm not crazy. This is the thing that cancels any movie's awards potential. And so I am not predicting Bardo in a single category, not even international feature, because I don't want to give it any kind of leg up in the race. This movie should not be contending. Uh, there need to be consequences for Inarritu's actions. He needs to face what he did, and he can't bury that story. So I am hoping that as the movie comes closer to coming out, more and more people acknowledge it. And I'm hoping that Netflix is not a part of trying to silence the story, because oh my god, I cannot in good conscience predict Bardo to be a big awards contender, even though I understand why other people are. And I just want to make sure people who are watching this video, because I know that people watch these prediction videos, this is a real thing that happened, and Inarritu needs to face the consequences for it. So, with all of that said, let's move past the serious stuff and get to the real meat and potatoes of Oscar predictions, starting with Best Documentary Feature. Okay, so you'll notice I really didn't change that much in here. I honestly don't know a whole lot about the documentaries that are in the race, and it's not a race that I'm really invested in. Fire of Love seems to be our frontrunner, but I added Moon Age Daydream to number 6. Sometimes biopics about musicians tend to do well, but I could also see that one being the frontrunner that gets snubbed. So, yeah, not much to say about this one. And again, I say this in every prediction video, but if I'm going too fast, you can just pause it. I don't really think there's a bunch to say about Best Documentary Feature because I haven't seen any of these movies and I don't really know much about them. But I am going to try to put in an effort to see more documentaries and international features as we get closer to the awards. Speaking of which, Best International Feature. So, leaving out that Inarritu movie that we don't talk about. We don't talk about Bardo. No. So Close, I still have Close in the number 1 position because I've heard very strong things about that. Decision to Leave, it's been announced that that will be South Korea's submission over Broker, which was a bit of a surprise to some, but I have heard good things about it, but also that it's a bit of a genre noir-esque film, and so I do have it predicted to get the nomination, but I really can't say what it's going to do. And then everything else, official competition, I've heard great things about. So, and it's like a satire about movies and award season that I think is going to speak to a lot of voters. All Quiet on the Western Front is a remake of the famous Best Picture winning film, but a German version. That I'm very curious to know how voters are going to react to that. And then RRR, haven't seen it yet, but it's a very, very big talked about movie, and India doesn't usually contend here, but India doesn't usually have a movie that is this big over on the West. Best Animated Feature. Okay, so not a ton of movement here. I think animated feature is one of those categories that fills up pretty quickly, relatively early into award season. You know what's going to get nominated. And Pinocchio, from everything we've seen, looks like it's going to be the movie to beat. Now, I think Pinocchio could potentially do really well in other tech categories, but we will see. It's always really tricky for animated films and other tech categories here. Now, I have yet to watch Lightyear, but from everything I've heard, that's not getting nominated anytime soon. And it is interesting how Lightyear, which is the Pixar movie that they really pushed, is in all likelihood not getting nominated, and Turning Red, which they dumped on Disney Plus at the beginning of the year, is pretty definitively getting nominated and might stand a chance at the win if the Netflix ones all monopolize each other. Because there's a lot of Netflix. Pinocchio, My Father's Dragon, Wendell and Wild, The Sea Beast. It's a lot, and something's got to give out. At the moment, I have The Sea Beast giving out, even though that's a really great film and it should be nominated. But Henry Selick has Wendell and Wild, and Disney has Strange World, and we're hoping that those are going to be big. I think there is a world where all the Netflix ones capitalize monopolize each other. And we really don't know what is going to happen, but I've got my eye on Pinocchio. I think Pinocchio is going to be the one to go far. And if it doesn't, I'm going to keep my eye on My Father's Dragon. Just because Cartoon Saloon is really overdue for an Oscar at this point. And I will say, I do want to bring up Marcel the Shell, because by all indication, it's going to make the eligibility shortlist, and A24 is really pushing it as animated. But I think it's going to run into some stumbling blocks when it comes to actually getting the nomination. Think back to the Lego movie that had some live action stuff in it, and I think that hurt when it came to getting the nomination. So, Marcel the Shell, I know I've heard a lot of great things about it, but I don't think it's getting nominated anytime soon. Next up, we have Best Sound. So I decided to move Top Gun Maverick into the #1 position, just because that seems to be the film that a lot of people are gravitating towards right now. I moved Top Gun Maverick up a lot in a couple different categories, as you will see. Avatar still could happen, although the field's starting to get a little bit more crowded. Now, I want to address something. One movie you will not see in this category is The Woman King. And in previous prediction videos, I had a lot of faith in The Woman King. But recently a couple of things have happened that have made me less faithful. I didn't remove it from my predictions entirely, but it's not nearly as prominent as it once was. To begin with, the trailer, while it looks interesting, the movie skews more action than I was anticipating. It looks like it's going more for a mainstream action thing and not in a big awardsy fair. But for a while, I was still, having hope. Come on, it's taking itself seriously enough. It's a true story. It's like a more mature version of Black Panther. Then we got the trailer for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, a movie that I knew was coming out, but I was not anticipating that trailer to be as good as it was. Clearly, Ryan Coogler is taking this one very, very seriously, and he's trying to... He understands the gravity of the situation, both what a huge cultural phenomenon the first one was, and also what a blow the passing of Chadwick Boseman was. Now, I don't know if Wakanda Forever is going to come anywhere close to Best Picture, but it's very obviously going to be a big moneymaker, and I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on it. So I would not write it out. I have it popping up in a couple of different tech categories. I think Wakanda Forever is going to overshadow The Woman King, because they're both similar-ish subject matters. And I think, it's not impossible that The Woman King could still be big, but I think the odds of it being successful have gone down. Now, with that said, I will also say 13 Lives, which I have seen, I think that movie makes complete sense as a lone sound nomination. I don't think it's going to do anything else, but a lone sound nomination makes perfect sense and honestly would be deserved. So I think that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to Best Original Song, which is a really, really tricky one. You'd think by this point in the race we would have figured out how this category was going to look, and yet we really don't. Hold My Hand is still at #1. I've moved Nobody Like You up significantly because it's the one movie we know has a song, and it has stuck around. Now, Black Panther was also nominated for a song, so maybe this one will be a big deal too. Matilda the Musical, at least we know that has songs in it. And then I made the decision to bump up This Is a Life from Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think this song could potentially be this year's Pie's Lullaby. As in, oh, we love the movie, we're nominating it everywhere else, and the song category is kind of weak this year, so sure, let's give it an extra nomination. Not the most memorable song in the world, but sometimes being attached to a movie that's doing well in every other category really does give you a leg up. And as for everything else, I really don't know. I Where the Crawdads Sing did not get good reviews, but are people singling out that song? Like, it could happen, and then Pinocchio and Strange World could have songs we don't know. Uh, I I'm sure that one of the we're gonna find out that The Fablemans has a song next month, or one of the other big Beatty dramas has an end credit song that's gonna like really do well in this category. But as of right now, we just don't know. Moving on to Best Original Score. Now, in this category, speaking of The Fablemans, I have that in number one uh, because it's John Williams. As I said previously, Empire of Light, which originally was going to be done by Thomas Newman, is going to be now done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Great composers, but they could have had an opportunity to give one to Thomas Newman. Now, I've decided to move up Pinocchio in this category into the top 5 because it's Desplat, and I think Alexandre Desplat, people do really love his music. He has missed recently for stuff like Midnight Sky and French Dispatch, um, so he's not guaranteed to get on. But if people really do respond well to the music, then I could see a world where this gets on. The Academy has also been a lot more open recently to nominating animated films in this category, so I'm gonna choose to be hopeful here. Best Visual Effects. Now, in this category, obviously Avatar is still in front, and I think Everything Everywhere is a solid number 2, even though it's been pointed out that the effects in that movie aren't really that impressive. I think there's so much has been publicized about, oh, it's such a small team, and even if the effects are relatively cheap, the fact that they have this like fun homemade quality adds to the charm. And obviously Avatar it is the number one, but a part of me thinks it would be really, really funny to see a film with a 5-person VFX team beat Avatar, but that's probably not going to happen. And then I have Wakanda Forever and Multiverse of Madness in there because they like to reward the MCU and also the Batman. And then you've got Top Gun Maverick, which, here's the thing about that movie. I understand that the Academy has been more willing to embrace practical effects as opposed to visual effects in this category, but Top Gun Maverick doesn't have visual effects or practical effects. They put a camera on a plane and they went up in the air. They did it for real. They didn't cheat with effects. And so, for that reason, I find it difficult to imagine that it's going to be nominated for effects, although some people might just get confused and like think it's really good effects or like get confused as to what the category is supposed to be for. Now, Pinocchio, that is one that I'm really curious about because it's happened a few times in the past. First with A Night Before Christmas, and then with Kubo and the Two Strings, and then also Lion King 2019, but people don't want to count that, that an animated film is up for Best Visual Effects. So it's gotten to the point now where we can kind of predict it. We can kind of have these conversations, and from what we've seen, like, there's going to be opportunities for, like, big, impressive visuals in that movie, and maybe, we don't know. That's really all I have to say about visual effects as a category. But I want to move on now to Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Now, not a ton of stuff to talk about here. When we get to like the tech categories in the middle, it starts to be difficult because a lot of these are movies that I've talked about before. If you've seen my previous videos, it's The Whale, Brendan Fraser in a fat suit, expected to be number 1, and then The Batman has Colin Farrell in really convincing makeup. I moved Matilda the Musical to the number 5 spot because that has the impressive transformation of Emma Thompson, but I really don't know. It's really hard to get a grasp on this category at this point. I do. I'm really, really curious if X is going to do anything because I have heard a lot of people talk about the impressive transformation of because one actor plays two different characters who you wouldn't initially think were played by the same actor. So that could happen. Also, Golda, I haven't heard much about that film beyond the initial photo transformation of Helen Mirren. So we'll see. Best costume design. Anything interesting to talk about in this category? I need to stop saying interesting. It's interesting. Enunciate more. I have Wakanda Forever getting in. Also, a movie called Chevalier. Probably pronouncing that wrong. But that is a movie that seems like a Cyrano esque comedic film set in that period, which looks like there's going to be plenty of opportunities for old fashioned costumes, the type that the Academy likes to reward. So I have moved that up there as well as a nomination for Wakanda Forever. Um, and we will see. I still don't really know exactly what's going to happen in this category, but yeah, I think I have a pretty solid grasp on it. Let's move up to production design. Anything to say about this one? I moved Wakanda Forever up there. Okay, Everything Everywhere I have at number 6. The Academy in recent years has been more into rewarding contemporary production design every once in a while. And that movie you might not initially think of for its production design, but when you take a second to sit back, most of that movie takes place in an office building, and you really forget that as the film goes on. And a lot of that is due to the production design and creating these like unique and different locations within this one building. So if they really love the movie and they're nominating it everywhere, I could see it getting an extra nomination in production design. Not much else to say. Also got Black Panther up there, and Babylon. Babylon is one of the few, like, I'm pretty confident that's winning because it's old Hollywood, and they love old Hollywood in this category. Then we have Best Cinematography, and I have Empire of Light number 1 because it's Roger Deakins. And I would believe, okay, I think Women King was there, and now I have Avatar The Way of Water there. No. Killers of the Flower Moon was there. Some of these categories look a little bit denser than I thought they would because Killers of the Flower Moon had to go, and also Woman King, which is still kind of present throughout, is no longer as present as it once was. I also want to mention the movie Tar. I haven't mentioned it up until this point. Tar, sorry, I said Tar, but it's T-A-R. So this is the film from Todd Field, and from the trailer we got, it was pretty clear to me that, oh, this is not going to be a super awards frenzy film. This is going to be very, very art house, very, very stylized, like Spencer or Jackie. And that's not to say it can't get nominations. I have it in for cinematography and score. I also have it in someplace else that you'll see. But I get the sense that people are going to be talking about this movie a lot, but it's not going to have enough support to get in picture. I think it might be a little bit too divisive for that, but it should still pop up a couple of places. Best Film Editing. Well, you've convinced me. I've got Top Gun Maverick in the top 5 now. It does make sense as an editing nomination. Okay, I'll give that to you. Also moved The Fabelmans up because a couple other things had to move down. So that's just the way that the shuffle works. A couple of the stuff in 7 through 10 is stuff that I'm really intrigued by, and I don't know how well it's going to do, but I think some of the stuff I want to address further when we get into Best Picture, because the Best Picture race is looking interesting this year, as we'll get to in a moment. Now, Best Adapted Screenplay is really interesting this year because I feel like a lot of the most obvious, flashy contenders are all in original, and with Killers of the Flower Moon moving out of the race, that leaves it essentially wide open. So I have decided to be a little bit more optimistic about Women Talking overall, We got a production still for that. We got a little bit more information about it. It's playing at a lot of big festivals. Okay, I'm going to be optimistic about this one, but we still don't know. The Sun, I'm definitely looking forward to, but there is a part of me that's like, how well is it gonna do? It's Florian Zeller, and he really impressed with the father, but is this one gonna have the same tricks? I said a lot of these things in previous videos. White Noise is a movie I'm a little bit more confident about overall because I think this is gonna be this is one of the biggest movies that Netflix has this year, and Netflix, they've got to have a couple big contenders in the race. And because we're not including We Don't Talk About Bardo, then White Noise is like the big frontrunner that I'm eyeing as one of the key Netflix plays throughout this season. And then, okay, some of you might be confused as to why I have the Banshees of Inisherin in here, because some of you might be like, I'm pretty sure that's original. But actually, it's based on, it was taken from an unproduced play. It was written as a play first, and then that got turned into a movie. And if that sounds familiar, it's because the same thing happened with Moonlight, and I believe something similar happened with Beast of the Southern Wild. Also, something kind of happened with Whiplash, where that was a short film. Started as a screenplay, became a short film, and then became a screenplay again, that they said was adapted even though it really wasn't. And with Banshees of Inisherin, I'm getting this vibe of, okay, I think the studio is going to push this adapted. They're going to try and make the claim that this is adapted, because it doesn't take much to make the claim that it's adapted. And looking at how strong original screenplay is, this is going to be, if I were Martin McDonagh, I'd be like, oh, I have a much easier chance getting in adapted than I do original. And then I also have The Whale, which just makes sense as a fifth nominee. I'm just going to have hope that Aronofsky makes a good movie with this one, although there's definitely a lot of concerns. Greatest Beer Run Ever is one I'm really curious about, because I think that one's going to be fun in kind of the same way that Green Book was fun, but I'm not sure if people are going to be in the mood to reward Peter Farrelly after not Green Book as a win. It's not that old, but it has not aged well at all. And there is a part of me, I know I have Pinocchio at number 10, I was sort of stretching for a 10, but there's a part of me that wonders if this is where Marcel the Shell comes up, because it's a movie that everybody likes, and I don't think it can get into animated, and I don't believe it has a song. So this might be its best shot, a random Best Adapted Screenplay nomination for this movie. But somehow I feel like it's not impossible. Moving on now to Best Original Screenplay, I still have Everything Everywhere in the number 1 position, and then Fabelman's Babylon. I've moved up After Sun and Empire of Light. I have this feeling that After Sun could be the little indie that could this year, and I don't know if it's going to be as successful as something like Coda, but I think it could get a lot of eyes on it from everything I've heard. Now, some people have Triangle of Sadness here, and from what I've heard, I think that one might be a little bit too weird and a little bit too uncomfortable for the Academy. But anything's possible. I don't want to completely rule that out. I am a little bit curious about Bros, because it is rare, but it does happen occasionally when a mainstream comedy gets nominated here, a la Bridesmaids. So that could happen, but I'm pretty confident in the 5 I have for right now. And I don't have much else to say. Again, I feel like I'm moving a little bit too fast here, but there's been other Oscar prediction videos where I thought I was being too fast, and I was actually taking up way more time than I needed to. So, but people seem to like these videos anyway, so I don't know what to tell you. Let's move on to the acting categories now, beginning with Best Supporting Actress. Now, this category is looking very interesting. First of all, congratulations, Michelle Williams, on your preemptive Oscar. Now that Lily Gladstone has moved out of the race for Killers of the Flower Moon for what would have been a very interesting role in that film, it looks like the path is clear for Williams to finally win her Oscar. Let's not count our chickens too early, but right now she seems like a pretty strong frontrunner. Let's hope that she can hold. Now, Women Talking, from what I understand, is looking to be more of an ensemble film, so I don't really know which of the characters are really going to be front and center. It looks like it's going to be one of those movies where there is no lead, but Buckley's character looks like it's going to be the one that's pushed the most, at least from what I've heard. Now, McDormand could have like a small but really significant supporting role, and so definitely keeping my eye on her. As for the son, Vanessa Kirby and Laura Dern, I'm not really sure of the two of them which is going to be the bigger push, and I could see both of them missing, but it does make sense to have one of them in there, and so I have Kirby for now. And then Sadie Sink, really on fire because of Stranger Things, and from what I understand, has a really juicy role in The Whale, so I have her on. But I have her on right next to Stephanie Hsu for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, there is a part of me that says it's unlikely that both of them make it on. They're both young newcomers playing like troubled daughter characters, but I don't know if I could really see both of them going the extra mile. But I think I've heard a lot of stuff about Sadie Sink, and she makes sense as a preemptive nominee. Meanwhile, Stephanie Hsu, if you like the movie, and most people do, a lot of people are singling her out as the emotional hook that keeps a lot of the film grounded. And the scene that she has near the end is really incredible. So it would feel bad if the movie got nominated all across the board, but then she was missing. So I do have her in the five. Um, I am a little bit concerned about both her and Sadie Sink because we ran into a bit of an issue last year in Best Actress where we had Alana Haim in Licorice Pizza, Rachel Zegler in West Side Story, and Amelia Jones in Coda, all deserving performances from young actresses that all got left off because they sort of monopolized each other. Now, with that in mind, that's why I'm not predicting Frankie Corlo for Aftersun, another like young performance. And before anyone says, I'm pretty sure that's a lead performance, I'm pretty sure that kids always get category frauded to supporting, so I'm pretty sure Frankie would as well. And then I have Thusa Matu. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that name, but she's moved down a bit. And Judi Dench for Alleluia, maybe. Like, sometimes they just want to nominate Judi Dench. We clearly saw that last year. So I don't really have anything more to add to this category, so let's move on to supporting actor. Now, this category is really interesting because we no longer have Jesse Plemons and Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon, and those two were like widely expected to be contenders. So, what is left to do? First of all, I have moved Ke Huy Quan into the number one spot, and I don't know how I feel about him as a winner, but I feel pretty confident that he's going to get nominated. There's a lot of talk about his performance in the film and about his story as an actor, so it makes sense that the nomination would happen. Now, Brad Pitt, from what I understand, has a really juicy supporting role in Babylon, but he just won supporting actor a couple years ago. They're not going to give him another supporting actor win. Zen McGrath could be a big newcomer story that luckily doesn't have to compete against other newcomers in the male category. Because from what I understand, he gets the juiciest role aside from Hugh Jackman in the movie. The Banshees of Inisherin. Okay, so I knew that this movie was co-starring Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. I knew that the Academy does not like two co-leads of the same gender, and they will always find a way to fraud one to supporting. For some reason, I don't know entirely why, but for some reason I had it in my head that Gleason was going to be the lead role of the movie, and Farrell was going to be in supporting. Judging by the trailer, that's not true at all. It looks like it's much more told from Farrell's point of view. And Gleason, so this is going to be a supporting role for Gleason, but a really juicy one for him. And he's an actor who's been around for a long time and has given a lot of great performances. So I really have my eye on this performance to be nominated. And then in fifth place, let's finally give one to Paul Dano. He deserves it. He really does. The others are sort of added in. Not really sure how to feel about a lot of them, but who knows, right? And I know that Woody Harrelson is the more well-known actor in Triangle of Sadness, but I've heard a lot of good things that Zlatko Buric is the actor who is getting better notices, so maybe that could be a thing that happens. And Russell Crowe, not featured in that trailer very much, but my gut tells me his role is a little bit more juicy than we think. So moving on to lead actress, and I believe I've kept the top 5 the same. This is the one category where I still have The Woman King getting nominated. So because it's essentially the same as it was, I don't really have anything to add here. Michelle Yeoh is the front runner, at least to get nominated. Coleman is Coleman. We know she's getting on. Margot Robbie, from what I've heard, has a really juicy role, but we'll see. It's weird because there's a part of me that's like, oh, she's gonna win next year for Barbie, and then I'm like, don't jump to conclusions like that. Like, if she's really deserving this year, give it to her this year. But I think the narrative might be around Yeoh. And then Cate Blanchett, even if the movie doesn't click with everybody, she's Cate Blanchett. Everyone else, I think, could get in, but I'm not sure. Danielle Deadwyler looks like she's going to be really good in Till, but the movie might be a little bit too tame and like not go far enough for the type of story it's telling. So we'll see. I added Naomi Ackie to the number 10 slot because from what I understand, it's a popular musician biopic. If the movie does well at the box office, then maybe. We have a similar example of that in Best Actor. Because I had to take out DiCaprio for Killers of the Flower Moon and also Coleman Domingo for Rustin, which also got pushed to next year, that meant I literally took my 3 through 7 in this category and made them my 1 through 5. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, as you'll see. Brendan Fraser is now the person I have the most. I think it's going to be him to win the Oscar. And we don't know. I think we don't know how the movie's going to be received. If anyone criticizes it for a fat phobia, then it's going to be tricky. But at the moment, I think people are really rooting for Fraser. Jackman could win, but I don't know if the role is going to be like as big, no pun intended, as what Fraser is doing, which is like a big showcase for him. And also Jackman, with everything going on with the Music Man, I feel like he's not as beloved in the industry as he once was. Austin Butler, I was unsure before if he was going to make it in for a nomination, but with DiCaprio and Domingo gone, oh yeah, he's definitely making it on. And then Paul Mescal, After Sun, Little Indie That Could, all over that. And then Adam Driver looking to pick up his 3rd nomination for White Noise, because I think that's going to be a big Netflix play. And then everything else, I don't know. Like, I could see Farrell making it on if he's had a really incredible year, but I don't know about everyone else. It'd be really interesting if this is the film that gets Zac Efron his first nomination, though. Greatest beer run ever. We'll wait to see just how well that does. And then, in the category of Best Director, so it's funny, I said for a while that, like, it felt like 4 of the 5 slots were already taken with Daniels, Spielberg, Chazelle, and Scorsese. Now we know that Scorsese's moving out, which makes this category a little bit more open. But I ended up defaulting with Sam Mendes in the number 4 slot, and then Sarah Polley at number 5. So I do think that if women talking is a big deal, then hopefully there will be eyes on her directing. But thankfully, she's not the only female director in consideration. We also have the director of Aftersun, which, if that's a little movie that it could go all the way. Sometimes they like directors who direct child performances, so that you could really see something special with that. And then we have a couple different people in the conversation, including Ruben Östlund for Triangle of Sadness, Darren Aronofsky for The Whale. We don't really know how well these are going to do. At the moment, I feel relatively confident with my top 5. And you know what? I actually feel like most of the things I want to say here are in picture. So I'm going to move to picture now. My top 3 are still the same, but I've moved up Empire of Light and Women Talking. And then 6 through 10 is really interesting, because we know it's going to be another year of 10. I don't know. It almost feels like this could be a year of 5. I don't know if there's enough support for these 6 through 10 movies. But I ultimately did go with Aftersun as the entity that could. The Sun, because I'm assuming it's going to get a lot of actor support. The Whale, White Noise, both of those hopefully are going to get support for them. And then I have Banshees of Inisherin at the next slot, because I have it in for supporting actor and screenplay, and it's hard to know what's going to contend. Now, I have Top Gun Maverick at number 11. I was really hesitant to accept this for a while, but okay. I'm not having it in the top 10 yet, but I'm open to it now. I think this is turning out to be a big... And it's not just that it's the No Way Home, it's the factor of oh, everyone saw it, therefore it should be nominated. The movie's fine. This is not something that needs to get a Best Picture nomination. And I think a lot of it is just, I'm so frustrated at the anti-animation bias. The Academy will nominate literally any decent live-action movie over a great animated movie. But unfortunately, we don't really have one of those in contention this year, unless everyone randomly decides that Turning Red is worthy, which they haven't so far. Now, there is a part of me that feels like Greatest Beer Run Ever could really be a contender after seeing that trailer. I just don't know if people will be ew. I think it's going to receive a lot of the similar praises and criticisms that Green Book got, but I don't know if the Academy will be oh, we're over this, or yeah, we can go for another round of it. Now, okay, so regarding Top Gun Maverick, I sort of moved past it, but I do think it could happen, because there's definitely been worse Best Picture nominees that we've gotten than it, but the movie's not really about anything. It's just it's a solid, good action movie about planes that's not really trying to say anything, and I feel it would be a weak Best Picture nominee, but that's just me. Not every good movie needs to be up for Best Picture. Okay, so, and beside that, I have Tar, Avatar: The Way of Water, and Close, and a lot of the stuff underneath that, I don't really know. The thing is, I'm really confident about the first 5 through 6. A part of me feels like I should have Aftersun higher than Women Talking, but that's going to be a big deal. I think 7 through 10 are really just, I don't know. I realized after the fact, after I'd already put these together, that I had indirectly used the 10 films that are going to get screenplay nominations in for picture. And that doesn't always work out that way, but honestly, it seems like a safe bet. Having a screenplay nomination really helps. So, I now in terms of what's winning, I still have Everything Everywhere in the number one spot, and a lot of people are still not 100% seeing it. And here's the thing: I don't know if Everything Everywhere is winning Best Picture. I know it's getting nominated. It's kind of foolish to say it's not getting nominated. It's been a while since it came out, and people are still finding reasons to talk about it. I think there's no way it's not going to get talked about come the end of award season. This is, if nothing else, it's the Get Out, Mad Max Fury Road, Black Panther, the early year release that gets everybody talking and gets nominated. Um, However, the responses I've seen for this movie are so passionate, I think there is a world in which it wins Best Picture. But I have noticed recently I'm starting to see not necessarily backlash, but the people who don't think the movie is the second coming of Christ and were too afraid to say it earlier are now starting to come out of the woodwork and be like, okay, but the second act is kind of too we're starting to see the criticisms come in, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily enough to derail the campaign. Every movie is going to have its criticisms, and the people who love Everything Everywhere really love it. And it's easy to say, oh, but it's too weird. The definition of what a Best Picture winner is has changed a lot over the past decade, and I think Everything Everywhere is going to be in the conversation. I think one of these big movies like Fabelmans or Babylon is going to come along and get that's going to be considered the Best Picture frontrunner for a time, and then Everything Everywhere can come up from behind once the backlash on that movie starts. Because that's how it works. It's never the frontrunner. The Best Picture winner always has to be the underdog. And if Everything Everywhere manages to stay the underdog, it can win Best Picture. There is a world where it really overperforms on nomination day and then the backlash comes against it, like Power of the Dog or Roma. But as of right now, Everything Everywhere makes more sense to predict as a Best Picture winner than any of the others, because this is one that's been widely seen and clearly has a lot of passion behind it. Okay, so I think that's all that needs to be said. Hopefully this Oscar prediction video comes up. It comes out shorter than some of the other ones I've done. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll try to have Pixels to Pictures up relatively soon. See you guys later. Bye.